Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the American-Pakistan Foundation, it is my distinct honor to welcome you all to our annual Fellows presentation. Today, we have the privilege of hearing from our distinguished NRSP and UN Fellows who have been doing extraordinary work at the front lines of development. This year was especially meaningful for APF as we sent in-person fellows to Pakistan for the first time in 6 years, giving them the opportunity to visit rural communities and experience development work on the ground. From strengthening communities through grassroots initiatives to driving impact on global platforms, their journeys reflect the power of young leaders shaping a more inclusive and resilient future. This gathering is not only a celebration of their achievements, but also a reminder of how investing in talent and vision can transform lives and create lasting change. Now, without further ado, I would like to invite Adina Amir, an NRSP fellow, to share her work and everything she experienced in Pakistan for 6 long weeks. Adina, you have the floor.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to share my screen and then we can get started. Okay, can everybody see the full screen?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So, hi everyone. My name is Adina Amir, and I worked on the NRSP Every Water Assessment, where I looked at utilization and distribution of water filters. So, to begin with, here's a little bit more about the intervention. So NRSP partnered up with Every Water, which is an organization that produces water filters that you can attach to taps or coolers. And then they gave these out in Tando Muhammad Khan in the Lakat district of Sindh. This is a very water-stressed area, and um, a a large majority of the population does not have access to clean drinking water. So these filters were distributed along with coolers because this this is one of the most ultra poor population groups, and so it can't be assumed that they have either running water or even like coolers to attach these filters onto. So it was a pilot study, and 2,500 households received these filters. And NRSP itself was doing a quantitative impact assessment to compare the health impacts that were coming out of this new access to clean drinking water. So I did a supplemental qualitative study that looked at the distribution and utilization of these filters. So my assessment had the following objectives: to see how beneficiaries described the interaction with NRSP, and that really meant to understand whether the distribution process was equitable. It got to all the households that were in need, and then whether they had any challenges themselves receiving these filters. Do beneficiaries understand how to use these filters? And are they effectively utilizing them as well? Okay, so to answer these questions, I did interviews with NRSP staff, community resource personnel, which were the people who were doing data collection and passing out these filters, and then also interviews with beneficiary community members. So I had 4 staff interviews, 2 from the home office, and then 2 from Tando Muhammad Khan, who were directly in charge of implementing this program. And then I had a focus group discussion with the community resource personnel. And then for the beneficiary interviews, we picked 8 districts, 2 from each within the 4 village, 8 villages from the 4 districts within Lakat that we had the distribution in. And we randomly selected beneficiaries from within those villages. So it wasn't a representative sample, but it gave us really good emerging insights into what was going on the ground. So key finding: the distribution process was equitable, which meant that staff went out of their way to first conduct a pre-assessment to identify all the households that were within the districts that the project would be implemented in. And then they did a baseline survey for all the households that were identified and gave them a token that they could then exchange after they attended the training, which also took place within their communities. And this is especially great because people don't have to go out of their way to pick up these filters. They don't have to go out of their way to learn about these filters, which can be a really significant barrier for a lot of these people. The second key finding we found was that there was a lot of knowledge transfer in some aspects of the training. So people couldn't generally remember things like why, like what are germs or what is water contamination beyond just, oh, I see like my water is cloudy or it tastes bitter. But they understood really well how to clean these filters. And just from looking at the water cooler and then filter over here, we can see they're taking multiple steps to take care of it. And we even see water stains under the cooler itself, which implies that people are using it. And we see an extra cooler over here in the picture. And this is actually to take clean water with you while you go on work. Um, so all of these indicate that there is good utilization and adoption. For socioeconomic impacts, the most vulnerable populations had the biggest impacts from receiving these filters. That didn't just mean access to clean water, because most of these people didn't had very limited access to clean water, but it meant that women had to travel less or less frequently to get this water, and that the poorest households had limited access to recontamination agents like using ice or matkas. So we're expecting to see the greatest health impacts within those population groups. There are sustainability challenges. It's a free intervention, so NRSP needs somebody to either pick up this project, which with the state of the International Donor Society can be a challenge. And so we'll look at some of the strategic recommendations next. So the first thing that we need to do is to strengthen equity because it was a distribution process. Some people were inevitably left behind. And to ensure when we're past this pilot intervention that no people are left behind, or that if anybody has any problems with the filter, that there are steps that they can take to make sure that they reincorporate themselves or let people know of the challenges that they might be facing with the filters. So to address this concern along with the financing challenge, I recommended a blended financing model that combines institutional support from NRSP, donor contributions, but then also some type of private sector partnership, and then community contributions as well. This is because relying on one single method, as we've seen before, does not can lead to challenges, especially in the development sector. So, um, over here, the public-private partnership would ideally be with every water, where we can apply something like a buy one, subsidize one model. Where Life Straw has done something similar, where if you buy a life straw, you can also give a life straw in Kenya, for example. That's where they're working. And then likewise, a community community inputs can then help identify people who are left behind, challenges that might be taking place, or even deliver trainings. And this would not just be support for community members, but also give them training so that they can take it further beyond just implementing a project and ideally lead to income generation as well. So those are my strategic recommendations from my project. I'm happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Adina. This is very amazing. May I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so how much these filters cost, and what are the different sizes? Because obviously, contaminated water is probably one of the biggest problem in Pakistan, not just in rural areas, but also in urban areas. So I just wanted to, from your experience, how do you see this? What did you have enough time to actually measure the impact? Because there's so many diseases, which come out of this contaminated water. Um, did you deal with any clinics? How did you assess if there was an impact from your study?
So, there has enough time has not passed to like measure the impact of this assessment or this intervention. NRSP is conducting a full-scale impact evaluation, and that is currently taking place and will continue to do so over, I believe, the next year. And we'll get better insights into the health impacts that are coming out from this intervention. From talking to community members, we can our understanding is that there are health impacts, but we can't quantify these yet. As for the filters, Everywater, I'll drop the link for the company in the chat, but they actually have pretty affordable filters, like the one that was distributed with NRSP costs about 7,000 rupees, and they've even updated their product so that you don't need to have a cooler attached. You can just have a bag that's like pre-attached to the filter. So they're an incredible company. They have household products as well, and you can feel free to look over those on their website.
Sure. Okay, that's great.
Are there any questions for Adina before we move on to Rahima?
Yeah, I just had one question. Alina, it's a great presentation, and thank you for doing this great work. I think you mentioned that there was about 2,500 filters that were given by NRSP to these communities. What is sort of the extent of the problem in the big scheme of things? Because I'm assuming 2,500 is some sort of a drop in the ocean, or maybe it is more substantial, at least for this area.
Yeah, you're correct in saying that 2,500 is a drop in the bucket or drop in the ocean, though there's extreme limitations to access to clean water. And we hope that this intervention is scaled up on a national level. Some people have access to hand pumps. A lot of people are drinking open, like surface water. And they talk about all the health impacts these are having very openly, and we have really good scientific data to like back up the public health aspect of this as well. And it's even like talking to some of the beneficiaries, it's quite difficult to hear them talking about their family members who say things like, oh, we wish we really had this as well, and they don't. And the only reason why is because this has not been distributed yet to those population groups. And they themselves don't have access to this, like could not afford this product.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you everyone. And thank you for such a lovely presentation, Adina. Now we're gonna invite Rahima Sajid, our second NRSP fellow, to present the great work that she did. And we'll take it from there. The floor is yours, Rahima.
Thank you, Nahas. Hello, everybody. Assalamualaikum. I will just go ahead and share my screen and get started. Actually, my setting is not set to share. I have to go into my settings and like change that. So if anyone else wants to jump in and I get ready for it, that's also fine. Because I don't want to use up too much time in doing this.
No, that's completely fine. In the meantime, I did have one question for Adina, and then maybe you can answer later on as well. So before beginning your fellowship, Adina, what did you imagine development in Pakistan would look like, and how did that compare with what you actually saw and experienced on the ground in the rural communities you guys visited? I think Adina is off camera right now.
Sorry, could you repeat your question?
Yeah, no worries. So my question was, since you guys don't visit Pakistan every year, as far as I know, beginning your fellowship, what did you imagine development in Pakistan would look like? And how did that compare with what you actually saw and experienced on the ground in the different rural communities and villages you visited?
Yeah. So I actually do visit Pakistan relatively frequently, and I also have experience in the development sector. But I worked from Washington, D.C., um, which is nothing like the work that is being done in Pakistan. Um, we like study about these things, we learn about these things. But to see and experience it with your own eyes is completely different, and I think that it fundamentally shifts your like world perspective. um I think that it's an incredibly invaluable experience to see the communities that we learn about. We talk about water stress, we talk about climate change, and then to see the communities on the frontier of that is I don't feel like there are words that can describe it, but it fundamentally shifts your world perspective.
Thank you. So Rahim, I see you've been able to share your screen. Do you want to start off now?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, the way I structured my presentation for this particular gathering, it's a little bit more like less focused on like the project component and like what I've gotten in data, and more about like the overall experience. So hopefully just the presentation itself will answer the question that you just asked. I am one of the NRSP fellows that went to Pakistan, APF NRSP fellows that went to Pakistan with Adina and 2 more fellows this past summer. I had actually applied for this back in 2020 and couldn't go. And I was never able to quite forget about it. And so when we reopened the application, I was really excited and applied, and thankfully I was able to go. And so my presentation is really going to talk about just like my experience there overall, and again, less so on like the project component. So my goal for applying for this was to get the real-time fieldwork experience. I wanted to learn how to implement and utilize research practices, because this is actually not my background. My career has been in nonprofits, in finance, fundraising, and operations. And so actually doing the survey design and data collection and data analysis and like learning about different software tools was all like something very new for me. What I think I did bring with me from my background career is actually having a little bit of an understanding of donor relations and the power dynamics that this can play out. Particularly, I was interested in seeing how this plays out between like the West and the East, and to learn more about community-led concepts and practical structures that actually implement these projects, right? And what is like the most effective way to do that? So more so like the structure and like the success rate that these lead to. And then I also wanted, this was like a very personal thing, I wanted to gain clarity on how to start and actually implement a sewage and wastewater treatment project in my own home village, which is something I'm still like working on. But I was also very interested to see like if I'm here in Pakistan working in this space, how much can I learn and bring back with me to start like my own initiative. So I'll get right into it. When it came to the survey design, I designed surveys for, sorry, I'm just, at the CO level for staff and for beneficiaries. And while doing the survey design, I did it for people in like the SID region. So I remember actually like getting very technical with it and like, okay, this has to be not only bilingual, but trilingual, keeping like the diversity of Pakistan and the multi languages that are spoken over there in mind. And I was able to complete the beneficiaries survey, but I experienced less luck completing the LSO and the OMC survey. And I think the possible reasons that when I like reflected on why this happened was probably because the project that I actually worked on had been completed for several years. And I'm sort of going in and seeing the impact of it and just seeing like the success rate of it and just how it has impacted and changed the lives of the individuals. And so in my head, when I was reading through like the like, I guess it was like the initial grant agreement or like the project structure, the way it was written, the OMC cost, which was the maintenance, operation and maintenance cost, were not as needed as I had thought it would be, right? Like I was anticipating like, okay, there's gonna be a more set structure on this, but it was very like grassroots and community based. And so I went ahead and I created like this whole survey for it. And I don't think it was like needed necessarily when I actually went and did like the real time data collection. And then I also have to be honest, like it took me, and I'm still learning how to fully understand the CO structure for myself. Like it's been a learning journey on doing that. So my mode, like my method of collecting things was I printed the surveys. I had translation support in photo Gurfat, even though I had like the trilingual, survey done, but getting responses back, right? I needed support. And so I had that. Where I could have improved my design of the survey, in my opinion, was sort of like going over question and goals with my teammates so that we were on the same page in terms of probing. And what I mean by that is like, when you get in there and you're doing this in real time, it's very different than when you're sitting there thinking it through and designing it. And so when you're actually getting like answers to questions, it's like you ask one question and people are answering things that might be like, information for another question, or like it was just a certain amount of probing we had to do to get to the answer that we were looking for a particular question. And so just learning like improvisation tactics, I think it's like a helpful thing, and just getting on the same page with like your team, like, okay, this can come up, how should we like direct the probes, right? I also learned to jot everything down because this can help with the qualitative analysis component of it when you're actually doing the data analysis. So when it came to the data analysis, I used Excel to digitize the surveys, the paper surveys that I had completed. And what really worked well for me in this part of the project was that I had a very small sample size. So I was really able to sit down and consider how to like digitize and analyze the data. I was also able to pick up behavior changes in answers that were probably not directly asked. And this is what I mean, like you jot everything down, you see like what's being said, and then you can kind of see like the trend coming up later. This part of it for me, when I was looking at the data, opened up the question of like, how do we continue investing in communities in the development space where projects have already been done and people have a motivation to continue to want to improve their quality of life and like their village and the structures that they're living within, right? What I would have liked to learn more on like a very personal level, again, because I don't have the background in this, and this was like a fellowship learning experience, I would have liked more guidance on how to formally use like a data analysis tool, even if it was for a small sample size, because I think as a learning tool, that's a very, very important skill that could then be applied. Like those same functions could be applied to like a larger sample size. So now this is just like the data that I had and, you know, the different projects that I worked on. So I'll just briefly tell you about the project, but I'm not going to go into like the details of like the percentages and like what I found and learned about. If somebody wants to, you know, have that for themselves, I can definitely share my presentation. But in Photo Burfat, where I went, it was a project where there was a water storage tank built right outside of a village that didn't have access to like water in a close proximity before. And so when I went in, I saw this like storage tank like right outside the village. So like, you know, people who were going, they said it would take an hour a day, I remember, to like go fetch water. And this is something they would have to do like multiple times a day, right? And this was, the water was not always clean previously, and it led to like many issues of like diseases, not even having proper water to do their cooking. And even to the point where they were afraid to even like maintain like personal hygiene because the water that they were using before was causing like skin rashes and like just burning. And so there was like so many issues that came up. And again, I'm not going to go into like the details of it, but I'll just go ahead and like go through the slides so you can see it in a little bit more detail. I'll probably spend like, I guess, 5 seconds on each slide. And one fun thing that came out about this was actually this project was intended so that people can have access to drinking water, right? So all these other benefits of like, oh, we're using this for our cooking now, we're using this for our like, you know, maintaining our personal hygiene. One individual even shared that they use it now to like feed their livestock, and their livestock is doing better now, right? So it was very interesting to like hear about all of that, because it seems like the intention for like, you know, putting this water storage tank here was for just like access to safe and drinking water. But the impact it has had hasn't like, you know, been so much greater than that. People from different villages were now coming to this water storage tank to get their water because they knew it was tested water and it was clean water. And then this slide really focuses on like one recommendation that I've heard from like everybody when I was doing like the data collection was that they need to move to solar because the storage tank right now is operating on electricity. And when electricity is out, the individuals also don't have water anymore, right? And so everyone was like advocating for solar. And I see like the benefit in it, but I also think doing something like that would still require the same type of like proper training and making sure that the community understands what it takes to operate and maintain solar and the costs that go into it and what responsibilities they would have to bear on themselves to make sure that the solar system operates, right? And if they run into any issues, how do they go about like fixing it? Do they know who to go to? Do they know what the cost of it? Because I think those key components were very clear to them when the water storage tank was implemented. And this is sort of what led to some of like the success in you know, them being able to like upkeep and maintain it. And then I also went to another village where I looked at their water disposal and wastewater treatment project. So this was a village that didn't have a proper like sewage system previously, and they weren't treating their wastewater. And after this project was implemented, they, you know, it was amazing. Like the way I saw again changes in cleanliness and personal hygiene. But also there was a lot of behavioral change in people becoming more motivated now to just keeping their area clean. Like I was told like, well, now we use like garbage bins to like, you know, throw our garbage out. And we have more of like I guess it's like a community operated and owned way of making sure the environment is clean now because they have now access to this like one system that helps them get rid of like water, like water disposal and like wastewater treatment, right? And so again, this is just some of the questions that I had asked and some of the findings that I, came across, and I'm just putting it, out here for people to glance at it. So some of the conclusions and things that I have been thinking about, not necessarily based on these like individual projects, but it was just something that came up to me to think about, right? In both of these communities that I went to, they have learned how to maintain and have an ownership on these structural projects that were implemented. And also, I saw motivation to want to continue to grow and develop. Like, okay, we have like the water storage thing. We need solar. And the other village that I went to, like, oh, we have the sewer system done. We want to develop our roads now, right? So to me, it was like, oh, this is amazing. I love it, but I'm not like I see this like additional motivation, but I don't know where to direct it anymore, right? And I don't know if anyone out there knows how to direct this type of like motivation now, right? So how can we continue to build and develop in communities where we have already seen success rates on certain projects, right? And one thing that NRSP was really like being proud on was the fact that there is like this component of like donor relationships and like beneficiaries and like the projects that they can do, but they were also talking about like financing and how so much of their funding is also just like self-sourced, right? And so they don't have to rely on these like, extensive like donor agreements, right? And all these conditions that come with it. So then is there like a relationship component that could be also layered on to this like development financing project, right? And how do you continue to invest in communities where we've seen the success rate? Can they act as ambassadors to like individuals in nearby villages and stuff, right? So these sort of questions, these structural questions came up to me, and I don't have answers to them, and I don't think anybody does, but it's just a way of framing and looking at this for myself. And so the real-time field experience was very humbling for me. I am very, very grateful to be able to sit with individuals with such backgrounds who were able to, tell me about, the way their lives have been impacted and just the way things were before. It gave me a sense of hope. I think there's a lot of times we're talking about like these questions here, right? And like, how do we invest and what do we do? And like, what's the best framing? And, it goes on and on. But we could, being able to sit with individuals actually like feeds that spiritual place of like, oh, there's hope and it's humbling and I've seen the impact and this is great. So I definitely took that from the experience, and I'm still like processing it and like holding on to it. I have learned that believing in people can be very powerful. And I have left with more thoughts on evolving development sector models and concepts. And then this was, I think, just like a personal slide for myself of like to learn more about NRSP structures. Like, is it like what does someone do if they want to work with a project with NRSP, but their village is not included in like the LSO and CO structure, right? What is the most effective way to start a project? Is it training and networking connections on getting involved versus like how you just go in and technically register as a CO? This was all just questions that I had for myself, and I was asking NRSP about it because, like I said, I'm also interested in getting a project started in Johnny Chuck, and I'm not sure what is still the best way to do it. And this is something I'm still working on. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that lovely presentation, Rahima, and explaining all of the things you've learned and your main takeaways. I'm going to open it up to questions for both Rahima and the NRSP Fellows in general before we move on to the UN Fellows.
If I can make a comment, Maha, this is Dr. Qureshi. Addressing Rahima's question, first of all, we'll talk in the end. Amazing job, all four of you did. It's unfortunate that two of you could not attend. Addressing your question that you were asking, I've been involved with organizations which, especially in Thur, are putting hand pumps, and then they've moved on to currently putting reverse osmosis plants, which again feed nearby villages, so they're still walking the hour or 45 minutes. So that doesn't change, but they have clean water. The issue is that all of the organizations the 501c3 is doing without having a reasonably good governmental infrastructure, you really are, as Kashif said, adding drops to the ocean, but they are drops which add up. We could not get you to one of the villages of HDF, but I think you all went to the HDF center in Islamabad. Their motto is to reach the SDG goals, and they have villages that are adopted, and then they're converted. So then they have a school and a dispensary, and again, clean water, etc. And of course, you all must have heard about Pani Project, which was started with two of our leadership council, who were leadership council members about 7 years back. So there are multiple places you can feed into if you so wish, and working with HDF may be one of the places to go. But thank you very much for the wonderful presentations, and seems that you had a great experience, and we were very happy to revive the NRSP in-person fellowship. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nasser, for your comments, and thank you, Rahima Adina, for such wonderful presentations. It's been such a treat to learn from your experiences. And I would like to note we had two other fellows, Adia and Laiba, who were unable to make it today, but their presentations and deliverables will also be posted on the website for you guys to check out anytime. Thank you, Rahima and Adina.
May I comment on our system? If
Yes,
you
sure,
have
please.
anyone to connect me, like I've been to the HDF office, but to talk particularly about getting something like started in a place, if you can.
Yeah, we can do that
Yeah,
offline.
that would be great. Offline, thank you.
Thank you. Now I would like to invite our UN Fellows. We have Laiba, Rai, Anna, and Eamon here today who will share their experiences, all that they learned from the UN Fellowship, and everything that they did. Guys, feel free to introduce yourselves and get started. The floor is yours.
Hello, can you guys see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Maha. Hello, and assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you for taking out the time to hear all of us. We are the APF United Nations Fellows. It's me, Anna, Eamon, and Laiba. And we'll be giving you a short presentation on, our deliverables, our key takeaways, and generally as a holistic experience of what we did. Yep, so we'll be talking about the assessment papers that we wrote. Laiba and Eamon wrote a paper on politics, women in politics in Rwanda, and then I wrote a paper on digital technologies in advancing climate resilience and gender parity and climate change in Pakistan. And then we attended the CSW 69 conference in New York at the United Nations. We'll talk about our takeaways, what we learned, and then we hosted a roundtable, a webinar on digital inclusivity and AI, where we brought leading voices in policy, economics, and development. And finally, we'll talk about the deliverable, the final deliverable, the paper that we wrote on the 2030 agenda. Yep, I'll start off by talking about our paper briefly, the paper Anna and I wrote.
Right, I just want to interject and say if you're moving slides, we can't see any of that.
Okay, my bad, let me check. Can you see my screen?
Yes, no.
Perfect. Yep. Sorry for that. Sorry for that. I'll just go back to my the table of content. So here's what we'll present. I'll talk briefly about the paper that N and I wrote. We titled it AI and Climate Adaptation: Future-Proofing Agriculture in Pakistan. And a lot of interesting revelations, and when it comes to AI emerging tech in Pakistan, especially when it comes to agriculture, where 43% of the population is employed in the agri sector in Pakistan. I mean, obviously, Pakistan is highly vulnerable to climate change. We've seen what has happened, what has unfolded in the last few months, and that obviously threatens food security in Pakistan. In this paper, we talked about the potential that AI has, AI, IoT, 5G, and all those tools, emerging tech tools, have in the space of agriculture, employing people in maximizing yield, minimizing input cost, and minimizing water resources in agriculture. We talked about precision agriculture, how AI can be used to enhance market access, and the case studies that we used were from India, Sagu Bagu in Telangana, and Taiwan, and very interesting revelations in Sagu Bagu. They conducted a study over three crop cycles, which we call Kharif and Rabi, and they saw a 21% increase in yield for crops in Sagu Bagu. So we use those case studies similarly in Taiwan to how we can adopt those similar models in Pakistan, given the cost mitigation that we have, and the challenges that we faced in our research and sort of premise to Pakistan were like language barriers, lower digital literacy, limited credit access, and we talk about those as well. And then we also use those challenges for our policy recommendations and how we can mitigate those challenges. We talked about the digital data model. We talked about the DSS system and subscription-based access through landlords in Pakistan. So, I mean, the paper was great. We could have wrote 100 pages on it, but given the scarcity of the pages and time that we had, we made the most out of it. But it turned out to be really, really interesting. I'm happy to talk more and share the link to our paper as well later.
Okay, and I'm going to talk about the paper that me and Laiba worked on, and it was, as Rai was mentioning, Women in Politics in Rwanda. The main thing was that we chose Rwanda as our case study for women in politics because there's a lot of ideal outcomes happening in Rwanda because of this proper implementation of gender inclusive policies and how there's a lot of women in politics in Rwanda. Not to say that it's perfect. We had a section of our paper that delved a little bit into the political turmoil that's happening in the country as well. Lots of statistics were mentioned, and we did our best to connect it with Sustainable Development Goals. And I'm sure that Maha has already posted that paper, so it's available for you guys to read and dive more into it. And then for our recommendations, Laiba and I wanted to make sure we're offering realistic, practical recommendations. And so we kind of came up with some ideas regarding quotas and offering childcare to women who are interested in politics, gender inclusive policies. There's a lot more in the paper just for the essence of time. This is the summary that I have. So thank you.
So we held a roundtable back in July where we discussed the digital divide, especially in light of AI and how AI is being built on mostly Western models, which may exclude Global South from it. On our panel, we had Dr. Hussain Nadeem, who founded Third World AI, which is a democracy tracker. And then we had Kate Wiberney, who is a consultant at World Bank, and Faisal Alani, who works a lot on tech inclusion and has spent a lot of time in Africa and Asia to include local voices and the creation of AI. So we discussed generally about how AI's rise is becoming a parallel to government or the powers that governments have, because now you have new corporation and tech that are equally, if not more powerful than the governments, and who are changing the general global dynamic of like, China, US, Russia by being like the fourth player within it. It was a really interesting discussion where we got the opportunity to discuss like where like, a really pressing topic of AI, but also on the exclusion that it might create, especially for countries that are already being locked out of digital inclusion. And now they might be getting locked out of AI or the new tech that is coming in, and how that can further exacerbate the divides that we already live in. So it was very fruitful, and we had like really good participation from the people.
Yeah, so also as APF Fellows, we were able to attend the 69th Commission on the Status of Women, and that consisted of listening to global dialogue on gender equality. So we start off with panels like from Afghanistan to New York, where Afghan women on the ground shared urgent calls for action for their rights, and their encouragement was really truly shaping the policy framework that UNICEF was working with. We also attended empowerment panels with UNICEF, WHO, and BRAC, which emphasized like multi-sectoral collaboration, which really enforced a reoccurring theme for us, which is that no single actor can achieve gender justice alone. I think a highlight was also being a part of Harvard Club of 30 Years of Beijing platform, where we heard women who shaped the original Declaration for Women's Rights talking about how youth are the catalyst for change, and this idea that intersectionality should be emphasized. And so key takeaways for us truly with that experience was that, lived experiences like these women in Afghanistan should really inform global policy and shape dialogue, and that cross-sector collaboration is critical for equity, and a big one for all of us with the youth are catalysts, not just symbolic participants. So that really means that we can make an emphasis. We don't just inherit the work that we do. We also should be committed to having these global conversations transcend.
Okay, and we're going to move on to our final paper now. The title of the final paper was Code, Control, and Capital, Crypto AI, and the Geopolitics of Inequality. The reason why we chose the specific title and subject to work on is because our prompt kind of directed us to work with ECOSOC's theme of digital inclusion and emerging technology. So we wanted to make sure we have a topic that's kind of related to that. And so we were exploring, again, crypto, AI. We were looking at this lens of inequality. So not just the security risks, like global security risk, but we also explored some of the benefits and conducted collaborative research. We were identifying case studies. The picture that's on the slide actually is from Zimbabwe, because we were discussing which case studies we should add, and I believe Zimbabwe was one of them. It's the Huawei Safe City. So if you get the time to read the paper, you're gonna notice that that's been mentioned in there. Some of the key findings from this paper were just the lack of global regulation around technology, AI, and the oversight that's risking climate change. There's a lot of mention of climate change in our paper as well, especially with blockchain mining and so many other things that are related to technology and AI that are growing. And also repression and developmental gaps, how certain countries are far ahead with regulation and others are barely even getting started. And then we came up with solutions. I think this is a theme that you probably have noticed is recommendations for all of our papers. And we came to the recommendations that it's really important to have fair global standards and transparency in terms of AI. Also, just expanding that ethical framework that needs to be, it's critical for the governance of AI. So we kind of just elaborated a little bit more upon that and added that as our recommendations.
Yep. And finally, we'll just each give one key takeaway from this entire fellowship. For me, I would say the main takeaway would be from the CSW conference that we attended. And I think, hearing from people sharing stories about exclusion, about inequities, really humbling, but also at the same time, it was a reminder that progress is not linear, obviously. It's non-linear, and people with the relentless hope are the ones who are able to constitute change in societies. And I think that's very applicable to what our uh, standing as Pakistanis is. But I think with hope, with some action and some move towards progress, we can definitely create some change. And that was sort of my key takeaway from this.
I think that my key takeaway was how change is built from very small actions. When we went to CSW, we interacted with a lot of NGOs and people who are working on ground, and how from a very like a detached view that might look a bit small and minute, but how all of that comes together to create any sort of change. I think like a bit on a critical side, it was a bit disappointing to see the presence of Pakistan or the lack thereof in UN session. And despite there being a delegation which was like sent from Pakistan, I think like they only attended it for a day or two or only a couple sessions. So as Pakistanis, like I was looking forward to it. I was looking forward to like maybe attending a session if it was arranged by Pakistan. So it was like one of the takeaways would be like if I were to ever be in a similar position, I would want Pakistan to have like be a bit more on forefront and create our own presence in the UN.
Yeah. And adding on to that, I think a personal key takeaway for me was the importance of bringing our own perspectives as, you know, as an American Pakistani to these global platforms like the UN, where I think often youth are kind of worried to have their perspective be talked about and shown, but they really emphasize that we're catalysts for change. And this idea that cross-sector collaboration is so important, you know, not just one entity can do it alone. So we spoke with like NGOs and academics and the private sector, and we really saw that they all have their unique strengths. So real progress is when we actually have open dialogue, working together, and not just, you know, discussing policy, but truly having actionable steps.
Yeah, and I'll just echo everything that was said by my peers. I think CSW was a great opportunity to just learn about, in general, Pakistan's platform on so many issues and the lack, as Anna was mentioning, of Pakistani representation, how important it is, and how this program, APF, has really helped us as UN Fellows to kind of dig some way through that and try to have our Pakistani representation be on those platforms in the UN and further. And then also, I would say another key takeaway for me is just the importance of research. We were writing a lot of papers and stuff, and I think when you're in the zone and writing them, you don't really think about the impact until when the papers are done and then they're being reviewed and we see the feedback and we've kind of understood the amount of research and effort that went into it and how it can actually be impactful. So I think research was probably, it was a great skill that I learned through this. So great takeaway for me.
Thank you. Yeah, that was it. Maha, the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much, guys. This has been such a treat to learn about all of your takeaways. And since I personally was part of this cohorts learning, it's so great to see everything come together. And at this point, I would really like to thank our board lead, Amna Akram. I'm not sure if she can unmute herself at this point, but I know how much Amna Akram and Amna Van, who couldn't make it today, were invested in your success and the success of this fellowship. So thank you so much for sharing everything. And I'm glad you were able to have such a great experience. I see Amna Akram unmuted herself. Amna, do you want to share any remarks?
Yes, I just thank you all. These were just fantastic presentations, and I was so happy to see the in-depth research done here and the very concrete and recommendations. So I haven't read all the papers, looking forward to reading them. I read a few and just very impressed, and I'm happy to hear that about the takeaways, that this was a great learning experience, not only for me, but for you as well. So good luck in future, and we really hope that you can stay in touch and be a part of our APF community.
Thank you, Amna.
Thank you. Dr. Nasser, I saw you unmuted yourself.
I'm unmuted now, Maha.
Is there anything you would like to share? Because I'm opening it to questions at this point, and then we'll have remarks from our board chair. Anyone have questions for the UN Fellows? So I personally had a question for you guys, and anyone can feel free to answer this. Did this fellowship change or influence how you viewed your professional journeys and put the policy world or multilateral organizations? Because I know when I did my internship at UNICEF, I learned that working in multilateral organizations might not be something I want to do immediately after graduating. So I know fellowships, particularly the ones in the Secretariat or UN in general, really influence what you thought the UN would look like versus what the work that you're actually doing. So do you guys have any experiences similar to that?
Yeah, I think like I feel the similar way where like when before starting this internship, I thought that I would want to work in the public sector or UN or international bureaucracy. But after attending the UN session, it felt like it wouldn't be the most challenging like space for me. It wouldn't like also like because it is filled with like people who are actually that part of delegations from different countries. It feels like there isn't like a lot of space for, you know, new entrants, especially like right out of undergrad. It seems like people are a lot like, you know, more skilled or they're coming after their grad schools or PhDs to really being heard in the UN. So I think that I personally felt that maybe like it isn't as challenging as I would have expected it to be, or it wasn't like doing enough for me to like feel fulfilled about my contribution to it.
Thank you. That is an interesting perspective. And our goal with these fellowships is to give you the experience, however you take it, whether you feel like that's what you want to do immediately, maybe later in your careers, or however you take the experiences on you. But our goal at APF is to provide you that platform to have those experiences and judge for yourself. Does anyone else have any questions? All right, at this point, I'm gonna give the floor to Dr. Nasser, our board chair of APF, to share a few remarks.
I'm sorry, I'm somewhere where I cannot open my video, so I apologize for that. I do want to thank all of our board members and executive committee members who have taken the time to attend this meeting. I won't give the names individually, but thank you very much. Your participation means a lot to the fellows, and we greatly appreciate that. I'd also like to thank Amna Kuram, who's our board member and executive committee member, and also lead for the UN Fellowship, and Amna Wan, who's one of our leadership council members who's previously been a UN Fellow, who's not here today, for the time and effort that they put into the guiding and the UN Fellows. But and of course, Maha, it takes an amazing amount of time to get all of this organized, and the dedication and commitment to have a positive impact and result from all of our fellowships and all of our programs is praiseworthy, and thank you, Maha. But most importantly, all of our fellows from NRSP and the UN fellows and the other fellows from Saif Khan who are not here today, and some in the public policy space. Your presentations were excellent, very mature, and you are the people who are going to make a change. So even if you feel United Nations is not the place, which I agree with, but there are so many ways where this experience for both of our fellowship cohorts can make you do something productive and long-lasting with a positive impact. And I hope that all of you will continue to not only interact with APF's Leadership Council, but will become members and participate in what we're doing and help us expand it. I hope some of our previous fellows are members of our Leadership Council and are continuously in touch, and some of them have become mentors for our current fellows and future fellows. So we look forward to your participation. The one thing which I would, and probably Maha may already been doing that, if you can send to Maha and she'll share it with us, any comments that you may have on how we can make these fellowships, I won't use the word improve, but do something or do more to make them more impactful for our fellows and the community that we are interacting with. I think that input would be great. With that, I thank you all again, and thank you very much for being a part of this a small journey in your life, and I'm glad to hear that it had a positive impact on everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Nasser, and thank you everyone for attending today, our board members and the fellows for your lovely presentations. Best of luck.